Welcome to another episode of Fast to Heal Stories, everyone. We are on to episode 115. I'm Shanna Hassan, your host. I'm a registered dietitian, and I teach you all about reversing insulin resistance because it is at the base root cause of a ton of lifestyle issues. And so I work with people, all of my students, I shouldn't say all of my students, but most of my students have some sort of blood sugar dysregulation, whether it be prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, PCOS being another big one, and even blood pressure issues and cholesterol issues. Anything metabolic, is usually pushed and driven by insulin resistance. So welcome to another episode. If you are joining me on YouTube, you will see that my surroundings are a little bit different. I'm actually recording this while I'm on vacation, and I wanted to do a Q&A episode because my wonderful assistant, Keely, keeps track of questions coming in about this lifestyle. What are your biggest struggles? And she has a whole big document. And with the launch of Low Insulin Academy and me being so focused on that, I had a lot of updating to do. I changed the name of the course. So you can imagine everything that needed to be done with a name change of the course. And it was December, like December is just crazy time for moms. I hadn't gone in to look at that document, that Q&A document or question document, struggle document. We kind of call it the question struggle document for a long time. I was like, I haven't done a Q&A episode in a while. I'm going to go check on that document, and holy cow. Okay, excuse me. I know some of you laughing at me for saying holy cow, but I am from Wisconsin. I'm a Midwest girl, which I'm sure you know by my accent, but holy cow, there were a ton of questions and struggles in there. So I'm actually going to be doing a couple of Q&A episodes coming up here because I want you to be able to move through those struggles. And when Keely sees those questions and struggles, she tries to consolidate them into, patterns that she sees. So if you've submitted a question, chances are somebody else has too. And I want to address some of those today, and I'll record another Q&A episode for next week as well. Announcements, I don't have a ton. Like I said, we are now into Low Insulin Academy Live, the live version. We are in our second week with a ton of brand new students, and that is going so well. If you missed the launch, that is okay. You can go to Low Insulin Academy Live. Go to fasttoheal.info/Low Insulin Academy Live, and you can get on the wait list. I will be doing another live round starting sometime in March. Or if you're one of those people who are just self-paced, want the online content, you can get all of the pre-recorded lessons and learn everything you need to know in order to reverse insulin resistance. You can go to fasttoheal.info/Low Insulin Academy online and just do the online version. You just won't get the live group coaching with me and 8 sessions of coaching. So you're more than welcome to go that route. Or if you just feel like, okay, I'm brand new to this, I just started listening, I just started following, I really don't know a lot about insulin resistance, if I have it, how to even get started. And Low Insulin Academy is a big course. Like there's the online version, there's about 35 recorded lessons. And when you do the live version, there's over 40 recorded lessons because I put all of the coaching lessons in there as well once we go through those. If that seems a little overwhelming, I would recommend you do my starter course, which is called Metabolic Makeover. And that you can find at fasttoheal.info/metabolic makeover. And that's just 3 pre-recorded lessons to get you started. So it's less overwhelming if you're just getting started now. If you're somebody who's had insulin resistance for a long time and it's a long-standing process, and you've implemented some strategies, but you're still not moving toward what you would like, then I would recommend Low Insulin Academy, because that covers everything for how to reverse it. But if you're just getting started and you're like, I don't really know, I would do Metabolic Makeover. So those are 2 courses that are set up for you. Otherwise, there is personalized protocols available where I actually write you a 4-week protocol, and I give you both fasting recommendations and carbohydrate recommendations. I'm sorry, I keep having to clear my throat. But you can go to fasttoheal.info/personalized protocols, and that will get you a 4-week written version of what I would suggest for you based on where you are right now, what your health issues are, what you've already implemented as far as fasting, intermittent fasting, and low carb approach goes. If you're brand new, we start out a lot slower than somebody who's been at this for a while. So that would be another strategy and another resource, another service that I could offer you to get going with this lifestyle. So all of those 3 things are wonderful ways to start reversing your insulin resistance. But let's get to Q&A. I have a lot to talk about as usual. So let's get started. I have 4 questions that I'll be going through, 4 topics. And then, like I said, next week I'll tackle 4 more questions and 4 more topics. But this first question is super interesting that this comes up because I personally struggle with this. So question number 1 is, what is the best fasting schedule for adrenal fatigue and menopause? This is a loaded question, right? So all of these questions, that's why I do a podcast about them, because if you write in and you say, hey, what's the best fasting schedule for adrenal fatigue and menopause? I'd be like, whoa, like there are a lot of variables to consider, rather than me just saying, 16-8 is best for cortisol issues. Like it depends on many factors in your current lifestyle and where you're at. So that's why those personalized protocols can be very, very helpful. But this adrenal fatigue, I'm not through menopause. I'm not even in I have to be in perimenopause. I just had a birthday last week, and I celebrated my 47th birthday. So I am, I'm not one of those people to like try to hide my age or try to appear younger than I am. Like, I am proud of myself for getting through 47 years. So I just turned 47 last week. And I still get very, very regular cycles. Like, they are more regular now in my, gosh, am I in my late 40s, or am I still considered mid 40s? I don't even know. But anyway, my mid to late 40s, they're more regular now than they were in my teens, 20s, and even 30s. This is the most regular my cycles have ever been. Now that I'm not having kids, my kids are teenagers. It's like I know more about my cycle now than I ever did. But I'm not, I would have, based on my age, I'm obviously into perimenopause, but I'm not showing the symptoms yet. And my cycle is still very regular. But interestingly enough, I had some lab work done. I am now a ZRT laboratory provider, meaning when you work with me, or you go into my courses, or you do a personalized protocol with me, or you do like any kind of follow-up after my courses, you can get some metabolic testing done, whether it's just fasting insulin or a complete metabolic panel. And when I became a ZRT provider, I was sent a testing kit, so I knew how the process worked, and how to interpret the labs and all of that. So I was actually sent a fasting insulin because I'd had my complete metabolic panel done last summer, and I was a little bit taken aback by it. Last summer, my cholesterol levels, my fasting glucose, my A1C was all very normal. There was no signs of any metabolic disease. My glucose was in the 60s, I believe. My A1C was like 5.4, I believe, which I thought it might actually be a little bit lower, but I do have very, very strong type 2 diabetes in my family, and pre-diabetes. And I also have PCOS in my family, which I didn't really know until the last couple of years, because women didn't know about PCOS. My mom clearly had it. My sister had it, but we didn't know what the heck it was, back when my mom was growing up and when I was growing up. And I think I might have had it as well in high school because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I went about 6 months every time I was in basketball season with no period. And I always chalked it up to over, just so much exercise and low body fat. But anyway, I got my labs done and last summer, and everything was very normal except my fasting insulin. Here I am teaching about a low insulin lifestyle, and my fasting insulin came back at 10. I was floored. I thought it would be under 6 for sure. I was like, oh my gosh, I am insulin resistant, like pretty severely. Even though I only eat twice a day, I eat low carb, I exercise very regularly. But it was at 10. So for those of you who've had your fasting insulin done, between 2 and 6 is ideal. Between 6 and 12 is some insulin resistance, and over 12 right now with the data that we have, the over 12 is considered pretty severely insulin resistant. So it's frustrating because if you get a fasting insulin lab drawn now and it comes back at 15, the interpretation on the conventional system will say like up to 21. I think it is 21 or 25 is okay, but that is not updated. Like you should be under 6 for ideally. So I was at 10. So I was showing some pretty severe insulin resistance. I was like, oh my goodness. And I wasn't sure if it was the lab that I was getting drawn or if it was my lifestyle, but I was drinking some electrolyte mix with stevia in it in the morning. So I actually took that out and I thought, okay, I'm going to get this retested. So I just had my fasting insulin only retested because everything else was great. Like my cholesterol was great. My triglycerides were in the 50s. My HDL was higher than my triglycerides, which is what you want to look for. My cholesterol was like 205, but it always runs, a little high. Not for me. My cholesterol panel looked perfect, but for the conventional system, I would probably be flagged because it's just over 200. But anyway, my fasting insulin this time came back at 7.5. So I had lowered it pretty significantly, but again, I didn't get it drawn with the same lab. Like I did my research and ZRT, I really like as a home kit provider for laboratory results. So that's why I switched. But it came back at 7.5. So it's still a little bit elevated despite my lifestyle. So again, I wasn't super surprised because I have such strong insulin resistance in my family. I can only imagine where I would be if I was eating all day and eating a lot of carbohydrate and not being active. I know for a fact I would be struggling with my weight and I would probably be, on the road to prediabetes if I didn't already have it. But the whole point of why I'm telling you this is I also had my thyroid hormones checked and my cortisol and the stress I think it was like a stress panel that I was checked. So I had to do a saliva test as well. And my cortisol in the morning is very low. And is when it should be the highest because cortisol basically is released in the early morning hours to wake you up and make you, give you energy. And then it kind of starts to fall a little bit during the day. But mine was very low in the morning. And what this shows is that for a long time, I probably had high cortisol in the morning because my adrenals were overstimulated because I am a type A. I try to do too much. And I had 3 kids and I was run ragged for so many years. And I over exercised. I felt like, I had to always be exercising and running 10 miles and driving my kids all over the place and getting them healthy meals and in the cusps of trying to start a business and not sleeping enough. And so what happens is my adrenals were probably compromised for so long that now I have low cortisol output in the morning and I have adrenal fatigue, which is what this person is talking about or asking about. So I've been there, I'm living it. I don't feel the signs all that much other than I always have a stiff neck and sometimes I don't sleep due to stress. But what is suggested, what I've done, because I kind of thought I was dealing with some adrenal issues, is I've backed off on long fasts and I've moved my fasting window to do more of a circadian fast. So I used to wait until at least noon, 1, 2 o'clock to eat. And that just doesn't seem to work well for my personal body. I'm up early. I'm a morning person. I'm a go-getter in the morning. I like want to conquer the world. And here I was holding out to eat until later in the day. I don't like to eat late at night. I don't feel well when I do that. But what I've done is I've started to shift that eating window earlier to be more of a circadian faster. So a circadian faster is one who is only eating basically with the circadian rhythm and eating when it's only eating when it's light out. So I still wait until like 9 or 10 to eat because I feel the best that way. I don't like to eat before I exercise. I don't feel as well when I'm exercising. But I've started to open my window, so to say, between somewhere between 9 and 11. And my body really likes that a lot better. And I think some of it is due to this adrenal fatigue. Um, so I've actually lost a few pounds since I've been doing that, which is crazy because I am not trying to lose weight. Um, but my body composition has just gotten better. So I think for me to wait until afternoon to eat was not ideal. Now, that's not to say everybody's going to be the same, but I think for adrenal fatigue, when your body's struggling with cortisol issues, already, to ask it to fast through the morning into the afternoon hours may not be the best approach for you. So if you know you have adrenal fatigue, what I would suggest is trying an earlier eating window and really focusing on TRE, or time restricted eating. Only eating a couple meals a day, letting that insulin fall in between meals, getting balanced meals, eating enough at your meals so that you can go 4, 5, 6. Sometimes I'm 7 hours out and I'm still like, oh, I should probably eat some dinner. But that might be very helpful if you have adrenal fatigue issues. Another thing that can help with adrenal fatigue is getting enough vitamin C and getting B vitamins in, because vitamin C really nourishes the adrenal glands. So I know a lot of times people are like, oh, I can't, on low carb, I can't have any citrus fruits. I can't have anything with vitamin C. And what I would encourage you to do is try, maybe some citrus fruits, or strawberries would be another good source of vitamin C, and just eat them at the tail end of your meal in small amounts so you're not stimulating your blood sugar, and see if that doesn't help you with your adrenal fatigue issues. And then maybe looking at a B vitamin supplement, or making sure you're getting enough B vitamins as well. So that's a very long-winded answer to the adrenal fatigue issue, but I did want to share that I'm struggling with the same thing. And I know it's just me being a mom of 3, wanting to conquer it all, and feeling like you got to be perfect every single day and get your exercise in. And so I've really backed off on really long runs. I don't do long runs anymore. I focus more on weight training a couple times a week and walking. And I maybe run once a week, couple, 3 to 5 miles, just for enjoyment. And because I have a running buddy I'd love to run with. But other than that, I'm doing more walks, more weight training, and I'm trying not to overstimulate that cortisol when I'm exercising. So those are some tips for that. Now, as far as the menopause part of it, like what's the best fasting schedule for adrenal fatigue and menopause? Now, menopause is actually easier to implement a fasting schedule because your hormones aren't fluctuating anymore like they were when you were. Perimenopause is probably the most challenging time to implement a fasting routine because you're not getting your period regularly. And the carb cycling that I suggest for those who are still menstruating, like upping your carbohydrates, that about 5 days prior to your period. It just doesn't hold true with menopause. So menopause is actually an easier time to implement a fasting routine because your hormones aren't fluctuating. I don't want to like, but I kind of categorize menopausal women in with men because men's hormones, sex hormones don't fluctuate like our women's do, and neither do menopausal women. So um, you can basically pick a fasting routine that works for you. And what I would suggest with if you're menopausal is just varying it from day to day. And, sometimes doing 16 hours of fasting, sometimes doing 18, 20, throwing a 24-hour fast in there every once in a while. That can be very, very helpful if you're menopausal because you don't have to worry about those hormones anymore. And then also, just don't overdo it and really focus on protein and getting enough protein in when you're menopausal, because as you age, you actually need more protein and your body gets a little less efficient at breaking it down. And you really want to protect that muscle mass as you get older. That the muscle mass equals longevity and living well. So you don't want to lose muscle mass as you are aging. So that would, for me, my recommendation in your menopausal years, that would be what I would really focus on is, varying your fasting schedule and really getting that protein intake prioritized so that you're not losing any muscle mass. Okay, so that was a very long answer, but question number 2, I promise I won't take as long on. Question number 2 is, how do I not shovel food into my mouth when I'm breaking my fast and avoid starvation during fasting? Okay, when I help people and students implement an intermittent fasting schedule, and some of them want to include longer fasts, the goal is not to be starving, right? Like that is not what we're trying to accomplish. We want to implement fasting slowly in a way that we are inducing fat burning, but is also something that we can do lifelong. If you're feeling like you're starving and you need to shovel food in your mouth as soon as you break that fast, that's not going to be a sustainable approach for you. So we want to focus on, lowering the insulin slowly over time, because if you want to shovel food in your mouth and you're starving when you're opening that window, your insulin is probably pretty high. And you're going to struggle with fasting. So you first want to work on bringing the insulin down slowly over time, like at least take a couple of weeks to just start eating balanced meals that are higher in protein and fat and limiting carbohydrate, and then not snacking, not eating at least 3 hours before bed. That's going to set you up to avoid binging. So if we're fasting, if we're doing an intermittent fast and then we're binging as soon as we open our window, that's going to basically, you can basically undo all of the good that you did during your fast if you're, out of control. So food order is also going to help you immensely if you eat your food in the correct order, meaning don't break your fast with high carbohydrate, sugary, starchy foods, because that's going to skyrocket your blood sugar and you're going to have a bigger insulin response and you're going to struggle with being able to feel in control and to feel nourished and feel satiety. So you want to make sure you're breaking your fast with either a high fiber food that's non-starchy, like a high fiber vegetable, and then eating your fats and your proteins. And if you have any starches, sugars, ultra processed carbohydrates that aren't full of fiber in their natural form, you want to have those at the end of your meal. Then you're not going to have the blood sugar and insulin response. But another thing is, if you are starving by the time you're done fasting, like there's no reason for you to hold out until like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Like try an earlier fasting window or eating window and see how that works. Like I do so much better fasting through dinner than I do fasting. I shouldn't say I can't fast through breakfast, but I struggle to fast through lunch and do, like, if I'm doing a 24-hour fast, which is not very often anymore, for me to go dinner to dinner is a huge challenge. But if I'm going to do like a late morning brunch, to brunch, that is way easier for me. So look at your eating window, and if you want to do like an 18-6 and you want to get 18 hours of fasting in, there's no rule that says you can't have like a window from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and just eat a really early dinner or a late lunch and then be done eating. That sometimes works very well for people and can actually spark some weight loss. So the real thing you want to focus on is that time restricted eating, and only having a couple of eating episodes during the day. When those doesn't really matter. It is what works for you. I will say nighttime eating isn't going to benefit hardly anyone because you're not as insulin sensitive. So if you have a window, I mean, there's a small subset that can pull this off, but most people, they usually see weight gain. Like say your window's from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. instead of like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. More people are going to struggle with that, with weight gain and not losing weight, just because your body's not as insulin sensitive at night, meaning it's not going to utilize that food as well. It's not going to utilize carbohydrate as well. So if you can push that window back and see if that helps, because you don't want to be like starving and out of control going into your eating window. Or what I do if I'm feeling really hungry, but I have something I need to finish up with work, or I'm about to record a podcast or something like that, I'll have like a quarter of a cup to a third a cup of pumpkin seeds, because those are high fiber and they have some fat and protein, and I'll eat those. And that just really nips my appetite. And then, by the time I'm ready to eat, I don't feel out of control. So try those things and see if that helps. All right, question number 3. How can I avoid waking up with headaches? A few things. Now, headaches can be complex. I don't have all the answers for headaches, but there are a few things that seem to stimulate headaches, especially when you're trying to adapt a low insulin lifestyle. So the first thing is being electrolytes. So a lot of times people are struggling with headaches because they're fasting longer hours, but they're not replenishing electrolytes, or they're losing electrolytes during their fast, because as insulin comes down, you're naturally going to flush extra fluids out. And with the fluids, if you're not careful, if you're not taking in enough electrolytes, you will also lose sodium, potassium, magnesium, and then you get a headache or you get nauseous feeling. Like that's one of the hardest things about implementing a ketogenic diet or implementing longer periods of fasting, is that you're losing electrolytes, and it becomes more challenging to feel well. So add some electrolytes, number 1, especially if you're doing a longer fast, like anything longer than 20 to 24 hours. If you're going overnight, for sure, you want to add electrolytes. And add your electrolytes right away in the morning as you're starting your fast. Like you don't want to wait until you have a headache to add some electrolytes. That's too late. So sometimes just putting some good sea salt or Redmond's real salt is what I use under your tongue throughout the day can make sure, because if you're keeping your sodium balanced, chances are you're going to keep your potassium and magnesium balanced. But if you're not taking in enough sodium, all of those electrolytes are going to start to be depleted. So you can add an electrolyte powder or a mix. And I like Element, which we'll link in the show notes. If you click on my Element link, you can actually get a free, if you haven't ordered from them before, you can get a free, I think it's like 12 different electrolyte mixes to try with your first order. So make sure to click on that. And it's called Element, LMNT. That is one of my favorites. Or Redmond Real Salt also has electrolyte mixes that I love because they use real sea salt, and their mixes have a good magnesium potassium ratio with the sodium. So you can use one of those, or just start to put some sea salt under your tongue as you're fasting. I add salt every morning to my tea. It enhances the flavor. And I know that I'm getting more sodium, because when you adapt a real food lifestyle too, like you're eating whole real food, they don't have a lot of sodium in them. The sodium comes from ultra processed foods, right? And that's not the good type of sodium. That's typically, unless the manufacturer's adding in sea salt, they're adding in sodium chloride that's been made in a building somewhere. Like it's not natural sea salt. So that's not the sodium that you want to focus on. So once you wipe those foods out or you decrease them a lot, it's more challenging to get your sodium. So I salt all my food at all my meals. And when I'm going somewhere, I'm a total salt snob. I actually take my little bottle of red real salt with me. I'm on vacation right now. I have it with me. That's what I'm putting in my tea in the morning. But I put it in my tea every morning and it makes it taste so good. And I know I'm getting some sodium in. And then I salt my food and I salt it very liberally. And people think that salt drives blood pressure issues, but it's really insulin resistance that's driving blood pressure issues. And if you're not careful on like a ketogenic diet, carnivore diet, paleo diet, even when you're not eating packaged foods, anytime you're not eating processed or packaged foods, you really do need to make sure you're salting your foods and getting enough sodium, because you're just not getting, there's not a ton of sodium in foods. So that will help with headaches. So try that. And then the other thing that you can try that really tends, food sensitivities will sometimes initiate headaches, and that's a whole nother podcast episode, but food sensitivities might be coming into play. I know my son gets headaches from red food dye and other food dyes. So that can come into play. Sometimes additives, they're very, very hard to pinpoint. So if you're getting headaches regularly outside of fasting and whole foods and not getting enough electrolytes, I would keep a journal and write down when you're getting headaches and what could be triggering them if they're food related. And then the last thing is sometimes big blood sugar fluctuations and a big rise in glucose or glucose spike can trigger a headache as well. So take a look at, if you're getting a headache, did I have something that would have, given me a big blood sugar spike? Did I eat my foods in an order that gave me a blood sugar spike? Did I have a lot of carbohydrate, or did I have a lot of sugar or something that could have given me a big blood sugar spike? And sometimes that triggers headaches as well. So those are three things. Like I said, headaches can be tough to pinpoint. Hormonal fluctuations can also trigger headaches. For some women, like estrogen rises or progesterone rises can trigger that as well. So keep a journal and just see what kind of trends you can see if adding the electrolytes and really stabilizing those blood sugar spikes doesn't seem to help. Okay, last question. I've been getting this question a lot, and it's come through in the document that my assistant Keely keeps for me, and a lot on Instagram as well. So I have seen this question a lot. So this question is, how do you keep a safe milk supply during nursing? And I've had a lot of questions about this lifestyle, like a low insulin lifestyle with both pregnancy and nursing. So I want to make sure to address this, because a lot of people are like, how do I implement fasting during pregnancy? How do I implement fasting while I'm nursing? And pregnancy and if you're nursing, this is not a good time to implement intermittent fasting. I don't suggest you implementing this full lifestyle right now while you're nursing. You don't want to compromise your baby's growth. You don't want to compromise your milk supply. I've had 3 teenagers, and well, I have 3 teenagers now, but I had all of them within 5 years, and they all got breast milk for a year. So there were, I mean, how many years is that? I don't know, 8 years that I was pregnant. Maybe only 6 or 7 that I was basically pregnant or nursing. And it's it's hard on your body. Like your body will prioritize your baby and your milk supply over you. So you really need to take care of yourself and not overdo it while you're pregnant and nursing. And believe me, I get it. Like I gained 30 pounds with each of my children, which is in the range of where you need to be. I was right in that 25 to 35 pounds. But it's like you have your baby and you just think this weight is going to fall right off, and it doesn't. And it's more challenging to lose weight while you're nursing because your hormones are still very, fluctuating a ton, and your body is not wanting to let go of a ton of body fat because it wants to be able to feed your baby. So long answer again, but it's not a great time to implement intermittent fasting. I would wait until you're weaned off and maybe even a month or two after that, because the hormonal fluctuations are high and you're more insulin resistant, especially while you're pregnant, because your body's in growth phase. So it just makes it tough to implement intermittent fasting. What I would suggest you do is focus on time restricted eating, what I was talking about earlier, and eating, focus on eating meals and eating nourishing meals that are higher in protein and fat and a little bit of, carbohydrate that's full of fiber in its natural form. And just make sure you're nourishing your body really well and avoiding snacking in between meals. Like if you have well-balanced meals that are satiating, focus on that. Focus on eating 3 meals a day and not eating at bedtime or in the overnight hours. And I know it's really easy if you're getting up in the middle of the night nursing to eat something. And I'm not saying if you're like super hungry not to eat, because that would not be good advice for a pregnant or nursing mother. But really just focusing on that time restricted eating, getting balanced meals, prioritizing your protein and fat, eating a limited amount of carbohydrate, um, and then just focusing on that TRE, not snacking, not stimulating blood sugar and insulin in between meals, and really staying hydrated. Oh my goodness, I couldn't believe how much I drank while I was nursing, and honestly, how much I ate. I mean, that was the most I've ever eaten in my entire life, was when I was nursing. So use it as a time. It's a really small blip in the grand scheme of things. Nursing, focus on your baby, focus on growing that little human and giving it the best nutrition that you can. And then after you've weaned off, maybe a month or two, then you can start implementing intermittent fasting. Because again, it's going to be hard to do intermittent fasting when you are more insulin resistant, because you're naturally more insulin resistant when you're pregnant and nursing. There is a really wonderful book that I'm not at home, of course, but it's Lily. Oh gosh, it's what is it called? Something during pregnancy. Is it eating while pregnant, eating during pregnant, or nutrition during pregnancy, or it's by Lily Nichols. Her name at least just came to me. Lilynnichols. And I think it's just called Nutrition During Pregnancy. And I apologize that I don't have the book in front of me, but it's by Lily Nichols. She's a registered dietitian, and she focuses on lower carb and, just really more primal nutrition while you're pregnant. And there's, eating the most nourishing foods on the planet. So that's a great resource as well. If you want to look for that, I would highly suggest that. I read that book after I was pregnant. I had my kids, but I did actually some continuing education. She has continuing education for dietitians based on that book. So it's a wonderful resource. So you can utilize that as well. All right. Well, that is all for today. I will tackle 4 more questions next week. I know that was a lot for you to go and think about. I hope you learned a lot during this podcast. If you have questions that you want answered, you can submit them to my assistant, Keely, and you can email her at support@fasttoheal.info. And we keep a running list of questions. So you can submit them there, or you can DM me on Instagram. So again, if you want to send them to Keely, she keeps a running document of all the questions that are submitted. It's support@fasttoheal.info. So thanks for tuning in. As always, I give a free download of my recipe book, which has 85 low carb recipes, or my Fast to Heal workbook, which is the companion guide to my book, Fast to Heal. I give a free download of one of those to anybody who reviews my podcast. And all you have to do is take a screenshot of it and either DM me this screenshot or email me, shanna@fasttoheal.info, and I will get you a free download of either my recipe book or my workbook, because it's so important. I know every podcast you listen to asks for ratings and reviews, but it really does help to get your podcast out to more people. It's the best way to get it in front of other more listeners. And this education, this information that you learn on Fast to Heal Stories is so valuable. It really turns lives around, and it helps people to overcome their insulin resistance. So if you could leave me a podcast rating and review, I would love that. It helps me so much. With that, anything that you hear on this podcast, of course, you want to run past your provider before you implement it. And make sure you have a conversation with the provider that you know best. All right, I'll see you again next Tuesday for another Q&A episode. Bye for now.